Hey yo, what's up? In this video, we're going to dive deep behind the sounds of the song Out of Tartarus from the Hades official soundtrack. Out of Tartarus. So let's give a little sample of what it looks like before we jump into checking out what's going on with this track. Hey yo, it's Alex from My Music, and as always with this channel, it's my mission to help musicians produce themselves by developing their mindset, expanding their creativity, and connecting to their inner artist in a deeper way. And in this video, we're going to dive deeper behind the sounds, behind the scenes of what's going on in the track Out of Tartarus from the Hades original soundtrack. And in case you weren't aware, Hades is a recently new video game. It is actually very good. It's an amazing video game. And on top of being such an amazing work of art, an amazing experience, a super fun game to play, the soundtrack is unbelievable. The soundtrack is absolutely killer. And the soundtrack was composed by composer Darren Korb. He is, I guess, the audio director for Supergiant Games, which is the company behind this game. And he's done all of their soundtracks for all of their past games as well, which is crazy. Fun fact that Darren actually did the voice acting for the main character of the game, Zagreus, and he directed all of the audio recording for all of the characters and all of the dialogue, because there's lots of dialogue in this game. So Darren is the man. Talk about a dream job, but he is killing it. All right, so if you want to check it out on Spotify, or if you want to check it out on Apple Music, wherever it might be, it is track 3 on the Hades original soundtrack by Darren Korb. All right, so I have the track loaded into Ableton here, and I think we're just gonna kind of go through it and break down what's going on in this track. And I gotta say, the first time I actually played Hades, the first time I loaded it up, the first thing that caught me was the epic intro music, okay? The music of this whole game is so killer, so cool, so original. So let's dive into this specific track and kind of see what's going on behind the scenes to maybe get some creative insight, get some cool inspiration, and maybe inspire you in a new direction. All right, so let's play it from the top. All right, so to start off this track, he uses this epic synth swell and then a shaker going on. So nothing too complicated so far. All right, so I loaded up just this Equator 2 patch, this epic pad sound, and he's just droning out the root note of the scale that he's working with, which is, I think, G 8-tone Spanish. I think he's using some sort of 8-tone Spanish scale, which we'll get into a little later. But for this intro pad, he's just droning out this type of pad on the root note. Right? And he's tickling those lower octaves, making it sound epic. And then he brings in a shaker. All right, so whether he's using like a shaker or a tambourine, he has some sort of live percussive element that he's using throughout the song. And Darren is really good at selecting the right sounds to paint a picture. All right, because the context of Hades is you're Hades' son, you're a character of Greek mythology, and you're in that Mediterranean area. So he uses a lot of Mediterranean sounds and instruments that really paint the picture of that area. He's kind of accenting the one with that shaker sound. So that kind of pattern, and then the main motif comes in. So the main motif comes in and then that shaker comes back in. And the first thing that jumps out about that main motif is one, the guitar sound is very unique. And two, the rhythmic pattern is very unique as well. So I decided to do a quick Google search to check out what instrument is used in the Hades soundtrack. And it is called a baglama. So I'm sure I'm butchering that pronunciation, but it says he actually used a Turkish instrument called a baglama. So that really helps to paint a picture of what type of environment and landscape you are in the video game. You're basically trying to escape hell. It has kind of that Eastern vibe. Very cool stuff. So I don't have a baglama, so I have this guitar sound that I'm going to use just for now to show you how the part is being played. And I found out that so as I was playing around figuring out this motif, I discovered that it was in a scale that I actually didn't really know before. And I discovered that it's super close to what is called the Phrygian scale, which already has an exotic kind of feel. However, it also has a flat 5. So it has this really dissonant interval in the scale. But it also has all the other characteristic notes of the Phrygian scale, so the flat 2. It has the 3, so it's a minor scale. And it has that flat 7 as well. So it's a very unique scale, and what this scale is actually called is the 8-tone Spanish scale, apparently. So that's the vibe that we're using in this track, the 8-tone Spanish scale. All right, so this is what the scale sounds like. Right? Pretty exotic, pretty uncertain, mysterious, all that fun stuff. Now let's zoom in on the actual motif and play it. Now that's a pretty serious riff. You know that this guy was into Tool, into Opeth, into some heavier music. Hells yeah. All right, so I'll play around with this melody so we can actually kind of get a better grip on what's going on. All right, so this riff, first of all, has a very, very unique rhythm to it. And he goes ahead and keeps us on our toes by changing and adding variation to this riff throughout it. So if we start off, let's nail the rhythm of this, because it's not in 4/4, that's for sure. It's not in the typical timing that you would typically maybe interface with. I think I got the count down. So the way that it works is we're counting eighth notes. So we're counting in a pulse that's eighth note rhythms, and it's a 5/8 pattern. All right, so we're going to count 1 2 3 4 5 1 2 3 4 5 1 2 3 4 5 1 2 3 4 5. So that's the main motif of this riff. However, with some of those variations, some of those starts and stops throughout this riff, he anchors on a 3 pulse. So some of the riff goes 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 3 4 5 1 2 3 4 5, right? Whichever way you want to count it. But sometimes he'll anchor on 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3, just on the 3/8 pulse or the 6/8 pulse, however you want to count it. So let's go through this riff and count it. So what I'm going to do is actually going to accent the beginning of all of these counting phrases with an open hi-hat, and then I'm going to just maintain the count with the closed hi-hat. See how that goes. Let's turn this down. So it'll be 1 2 3 4 5 1 2 3 4 5 1 2 3 4 5 1 2 3 4 2 3. That kind of thing, right? 1 2 3 4 5 1 2 3 4 5 1 2 3 4 5 1 2 3 4 5 6 1 2 3 4 5 1 2 3 4 5 1 2 3 4 5 1 2 3 4 5 6. So that's a very kind of Tool thing, a very progressive rock, progressive metal trick to do, is to have a really cool rhythm that's complex, but if you break it down, you're repeating that complex rhythm and creating a groove out of it. All right, so let's try to follow along. All right, so if you want to attempt to play this riff in any shape, way, or form, you're going to have to practice that unique rhythm. right, so that's pretty much the rhythm of the whole motif, except for that end part. That end part, he adds a little bit of rhythmic variation. So let's zoom in here. So he adds a little bit of space between those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So you could consider it, he adds an extra 3 count after the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then he adds 1, 2, 3 before starting the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then there's only a 2 count before it restarts again. All right, so let's count this little section to make sure we got it, and then continue. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2. So pretty complex rhythm there, but it adds that extra variation. It throws you off. It's kind of disorienting, which I'm guessing is what he was trying to do for this track in the video game, because I'm pretty sure this is when you start fighting some major demons, some major monsters. What better way to indicate that in a song than to have a disorienting timing? So it's a very kind of Latin feel. You hear those beep, 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 beep effects that kind of accent the offbeats of this already complex rhythm. Beep, 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 beep. 1, 2, 3. Then the bass comes in, joins in that riff. Pretty crazy. There's also a drum groove kick snare pattern that happens to really coagulate this groove because it's such a weird rhythm, but he finds a beat that kind of ties it together. So there's that kind of main rhythmic pattern on the drums. So when this bass comes in, the bass is now following. So when the bass started, it was just doing these punches, these low to accent the root note. But then here, the bass joins in with the guitars for that main motif and really solidifies that groove. And keep in mind that this main motif on top of the complex rhythmic pattern is always changing up the melodic variation. It's either na 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 or na 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 or na na na. Sometimes he stays on that flat 5, sometimes he goes to the flat 3, sometimes he does a little melodic sequence. He always changes it up. So that one was that. Na na na. So that was flat 5 to 4. So that was the 4 to the flat 5, but in triplets, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. That one was na na na. So he went down to the flat 3. So see how he's always changing it up? He's almost doing a different variation at the end of every phrase. So at that one, he goes up chromatically, and notice how this note is not in our 8-tone Spanish scale. Okay, so he chromatically goes up to... And it really adds that extra tension before restarting this riff. Really a masterful riff with a lot of variation. The motif changes. We start hearing those choirs come in, and I think we're into a 4/4 timing. So I really like that compositional move. You start off the whole motif really offbeat, really ambiguous rhythm going on, and you lure them back with a 4/4 timing. And we also hear all sorts of trippy, like, oh, kind of in the back. And it really adds to the different part here. right, so let's figure out this riff. Both the guitars and the bass are anchored together playing this new motif. So just bringing it in super strong. So let's figure this out. Something like that. And one extra cool thing is that at this part, we're using a part of the scale that we haven't played around with too much. Because before it was, right? We would kind of have the motif, we would start at the root, and then we'd go from this flat 7 back to the root as a hammer-on. But now we're going, we're using this flat 2 and this flat 3, which is a little bit more that Phrygian kind of feel, giving this kind of vibe. Right? So this motif starts something like that. So again, this rhythm is in 4/4, and we're anchoring the same kind of rhythmic feel, but accenting different parts of the scale. So let's play this together with this part. And towards the end of this new riff, he actually brings it back to the motif that we had in the first part of this song. So a super cool composition, killer. And now we go into a different part. Very cool. So we come into this whole new section, we simplify it. It's kind of this epic buildup. I really like this compositional choice. So the beautiful thing about this progression is that as we change intervals, the bass is always anchored to that G root note. And it really creates this really cool tension and movement, all while keeping us anchored to this root note. So this progression kind of looks like this as we move along. We start at the root. All right, then we jump to the flat 6 of the scale, then to the flat 7, and then we jump down to that perfect 5th, which is kind of a new addition for this part of the song. Then in the second part of the progression, we start at the root, we go to that flat 2, build up to the flat 3, and then back down to the perfect 5th. All right, so let's quickly play along with this part of the track. And another huge feature of this part of the composition is that it dynamically brings things in. It makes things less chaotic, less crazy, to really create that sense of dynamic. Really awesome stuff. So let's play along with this. Second repetition, they bring back the shaker, super cool. And there's also a lead sound that are following those same intervals, right? And then before going back into that main motif again, we continue building up from that second progression, right? Creating that tension before we go back into that main motif, right? Into this whole part here. And again, another piece of variation. And geez, man, I love this track. So after we go back into the main motif, it's the bass that takes the motif. The guitars just do these awesome rock and roll style punches. So let's listen. Bass. So just bass and drum. And the guitars are like shling, shling. Add those like Latin beeps. Beep, beep. Again, so it's the bass. So this whole section is all parts that we visited. However, it's the bass anchoring that main motif. The guitars are just doing these punches, and then we're weaving back in and out parts that we've previously heard. Super awesome way to keep the listener engaged. Very cool. Right at the end here, notice how there's a choir anchoring that root note again, that root note drone, very kind of metal styled. Just droning in the background, and then we cut it. Right? We bring it right down, sync up on those punches, go into the next section. So again, just great compositional moves. All right, and now for the second part of this track, we get full metal. Heavy electric guitars come in. Let's go. So these are all the same parts as the beginning of the song, but we just kick it into high gear with those distorted electric guitars. And then the drums kind of take the role of a metal drummer that's just beating the out of his drum kit. All right, so I got my guitar plugged in through my amp on the high gain channel. And we're gonna play along with this because it's too awesome not to. Am I right? Let's do it. And hey, if you're just getting started with music production and feeling completely overwhelmed by the process or having trouble finishing projects, or hey, if you just want to get a glimpse inside my personal workflow, I've created a super easy to follow 7-step framework that helps you go from your very first ideas all the way to a finished mix and master so you can continuously finish tracks and get better and better. It's super handy to have around the studio as a printout to follow along from time to time. So if you're interested in grabbing that, you can grab it in the link below. And hey, let me know, what did you think of this Hades track in particular? Did you like it? Did it unlock some cool creative and compositional tips or strategies that you can maybe use in your music? Personally, I think that all sorts of video game music are so dramatically underrated because there's some amazing songs, some amazing compositions, some amazing musicians and artists behind the scenes of all of these amazing games and sounds. And hey, let me know, this was something new for me that I thought I would try out. It seemed fun, it seemed valuable, it seemed useful. And if you enjoy this type of content, let me know in the comments below. And also let me know, is there a particular song that you'd like to see me break down and look behind the production and talk about some of its elements, whether it's from a video game, from a movie, from one of your favorite artists? I am open to exploring pretty much anything. So if you have any suggestions as to what I could cover in the future, let me know in the comments below. Let's start a conversation. And with that, I will wrap up this video and we'll see you in the next one.